Hello, Professor. Welcome to my virtual presentation on giraffes and more accurately measuring giraffes through the Zoomiverse platform that we did earlier in the year. So let's talk a little bit about the background of the giraffes and more importantly, what kind of giraffes they are. They are Maasai giraffes located in Tanzania and Kenya. And you can see from the picture on the right, the purple dots are every time they located one giraffe, they took a photograph of it. Normally with like some animals like sharks, they usually like tag it, and then that will be like their like version of a census. But because these giraffes are pretty endangered and they're also very afraid of human interaction, they just took a photo of it, left it alone, and then went about its day. So the problem with these giraffes is that they're actually becoming endangered very quickly, and this is due to habitat loss and illegal hunting. And there's only around 90,000 Maasai giraffes left, which is not a lot of giraffes if we're going to be honest. And through this Zoomiverse study, this is actually the biggest giraffe study to have been conducted. And it's due to the Wild Nature Institute, which is using this technology and the 25,000 square kilometers of where they took the pictures of all the giraffes that you see on the right. And it's using this to find demographics of each giraffe. So its height, its calf size. And with this demographic, we're able to tie it down to its age, and then using the age, we can use it to see kind of like the birth rates, how much the population is decreasing, how much it's going to increase, and so forth. And we'll continue to discuss that later in the presentation.
So a big question is why I chose giraffes, and I think this is a lot more than just kind of a college project. I've always liked giraffes. They're like a childhood, hero animal of mine. Giraffes and cheetahs, anything kind of like in the wild. But also kind of the curiosity behind a wild giraffe. I didn't know that there was different kind of giraffes, like a Maasai giraffe compared to a regular giraffe. I've seen a giraffe before at the zoo, but these giraffes look a lot different from the giraffes we usually see at the zoos. And then learning more about these giraffes, I found out, they're really important to our environment. They're a prey, they're also a predator to a lot of things. They eat their own fair share of plants, and they get eaten by their fair share of animals. So without these giraffes, obviously it would hurt our ecosystem in an insane amount. So what people don't understand is that these giraffes are very important in their own regions, and that's kind of like why I chose it, because I really wanted an animal that made a serious impact. And I think the giraffes, after reading all about it, is just that. So when it came to data collection and the task that we had to perform, on the right, you can see kind of the legend of what we had to do. The green was used to mark the horns, the red was used to mark the top of the head, the blue was used to indent where like the chest meets the neck meets the chest, and the last one was used to touch the bottom front of the front hoof. And by using these marks, scientists can actually use their own technology to actually measure out, based on these photographs, how tall the giraffe would be from the top of the head all the way down to the bottom. And it was a very easy task. It was kind of just like they sent you different photos, and if the bottom of the front hoof was invisible or the top of the horns were invisible, you didn't have to 100% do it. But it was just a bunch of different tasks, and using these tasks, we were able to measure out what these giraffes are, and with these measurements, we're able to come to a conclusion of what age they could be, how many months until they are a full adult. So what I was talking about before when I said wild giraffe versus a regular giraffe, how I had the depiction that there's only one kind of giraffe. So something like on the right is kind of like a typical giraffe. We see that pattern. We see that usually in the zoo, when you go to different zoos all around the United States, or even in the movies. Honestly, this is what a regular giraffe would look like. And you can see it has more blocky scales on it and thinner stripes going around the body. And something like the Maasai giraffe on the left has a lot smaller, faded. It kind of looks like it was brushed in with a lot bigger white lines kind of going through the center of it. That's kind of what makes it a little bit more unique, and how a lot of people can differ from a regular giraffe from a wild giraffe, especially out there in the wild in Kenya. When they were taking pictures of it, that's kind of how they use their photography to kind of separate the differences between the wild giraffes that were going extinct and other species. So let's go through an example of kind of how I located and did the database part of it. So we usually use the zooming tools to get closer, because the closer you get to the actual top of the horns, or like the indent with the neck and the chest, or like the hoof, the closer it is for the measurement. Because when you do a zoomed out photo, the measurement might be too long, because the pin doesn't actually pin to a very small spot. It pins to a wider spot the more zoomed out you are. So you would zoom in to kind of get closer to the horns, and then once you get reasonably close, you pin each horn, and then you would pin obviously the indent, and then you would pin the top of the head, and then you would pin the front of the hoof. And this one, obviously, like I said before, some pictures didn't have the front of the hoof, but this one didn't. So this would be a perfect example. And then once you've pinned everything, you would just click done, and then you would move on to the next giraffe, and then complete the same process over and over and over again. And these pictures would be sent out, and then they'd be used for measurements. So after all that kind of dotting and picking out the horns and all the specific key points, we come to this part, which is the results. And this was actually published by the group that did it. After a while, in the beginning of the semester when we were starting to do it, they didn't have anything, but actually it took only a few weeks after, and they actually had some results up. A lot of people contributed to this actual study. At the bottom, you can see the months of age, and then eventually it reaches up to adult, and it kind of just stops there because once you're an adult, the giraffe doesn't actually grow too much. And then the total height would be on the left, and it would be up in centimeters. Obviously, the female is going to be a little bit shorter than the male. And then as you could see, as the giraffe actually ages, you could actually identify that the giraffe is actually getting older. So obviously, as you grow, even as a human, you're getting older. Same thing applies for the giraffe. As the giraffe grew, the giraffe got older. So we used the pinpoints, remember, from the top of the horn, the top of the head, the neck incision, all that part, because sometimes if the giraffe is bent over and the head is bent over, you can't actually tell how tall the giraffe could be. So the measurement would be from like the top of the head to the neck would be one measurement, the horn to the top of the head, because maybe the horn was slightly tilted, and then the neck indent to the front hoof would tell the rest of the height, and that would be one total height. So it would be a perfect matchup like that. And then from that chart, we could obviously see that there's a positive correlation. So now using these results, we could actually identify a lot of things. We saw the positive correlation with the months of being born to the total height in centimeters. So that's the age right there. We could also see movement. So maybe the adult giraffes will actually stay secluded in one area compared to the young giraffes. Maybe they move in a lot more, or maybe they hang around groups. We could see a lot of things with that, or births. So we could see if there's a lot of births going on, if we see a lot of more baby cubs. So if we see a lot of cubs that have been born in within like the same 8-month period, we'll know that because there'll be a high number of 8-month giraffes. So we'll know that maybe there's a breeding month within that month. We could also see population change. So if we see a lot of if we see a lot more adult giraffes as opposed to baby giraffes, we also know that they're not breeding as much because of different reasons, like maybe the ecosystem around them isn't feeding them enough, or they're being hunted too much because their predator rate is high, or maybe their prey rate is low. So there's a lot of things that we can see from these results, and a lot of things that scientists use it for. So moving on, about Zooniverse, it's very easy to use. It's kind of like pretty straightforward. You can see the information that's given to you. You go through the tasks, and then you see what those tasks are going to be used for. They have a lot of resources for you. It's very helpful if you don't understand kind of what's going on, and they provide you with a lot of information about the people who are actually hosting that specific task and kind of like what their strategy is, what they want to do with this information. So it's really easy to use. Overall, my personal opinion on not just the project, but Zooniverse as a whole, is that it kind of feels good that, I could spend 30 minutes of my time to be able to make an impact to scientists out there who need help. Because obviously they might not have the resources to do all this information taking, because it does take a lot of time, especially when there's thousands and thousands of photos. So if only a few people could volunteer, it could even help them by a few hours. So it's really, really nice for people and Zooniverse to be able to connect people, regular people, with these scientists to help get these demographics. And overall, I felt like I was making a change and really helping out. And I know at the end of the day, I was just volunteering and doing a college project, but it felt like a lot more than a college project. It felt like I was really making a difference and making an impact. And that's kind of what I enjoyed about it, that, it is really an impact. It's not just I'm sitting there identifying how tall a giraffe is and measuring giraffes. I'm kind of really helping out, fix an endangered species, and potentially in the future, if I see these species on the news, I can think to myself, wow, I helped them out, regardless if it works out or not. But, I always hope it does work out for these giraffes. And here we have some photos of giraffes, and there's actually a hashtag for this movement. It's called Stand Tall for Giraffe. It's a really cool hashtag. I hope it trends, all over social media in the near future. But here are some photos of the giraffes, and they look absolutely phenomenal. Also, before I finish, I would 100% recommend watching this video. It's only about 4 to 5 minutes long. It's really cool. It kind of explains everything that the project really is about, and it kind of shows how giraffes are really important to our ecosystem, and the extinction of them would be really detrimental to us. So, it's an amazing video to watch. It's really straightforward, really simple, and easy to watch, and it really just showcases how it's really an important species. So I'm saying this is a recording, but I'm going to send the link along with this presentation. It's also on the presentation itself. If you just click the presentation, the play button in the center, it'll kind of play the video over, and it's a really easy 4-minute video, and it really just showcases everything. So thank you for listening, and take care.